11 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, West Metro, Chris Clark along with you. 12 days away from the season getting started for South Carolina and Old Dominion. Another scrimmage in the books as we are all that much closer to figuring out all the answers to the questions that we have about this team for what hopefully is going to be a good year.
12 days until the real kickoff of football is what
You're a week zero denier.
That's what you're saying.
Chris and I are week zero truthers.
Can we do another random Gamecock number? Number 12?
Yeah.
I have one.
Yeah. What you got?
We're going to have the same one again, aren't we? Pretty recent. How about Trey Kenyon?
Ooh.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. I like that. Oh, there's Shane Beamer on the TV. What is this? SEC Network. So I think it's Trey Kenyon. There's this one shot that Justin King and his crew or whatever in one of those hype videos, and it is right before Sandstorm hits, I think, and you see this close-up of the player, and he's looking up and kind of looking around. He has this look on his face like, holy, this place is amazing.
Yep.
I think that's Trey Kenyon.
Okay.
Could be wrong. Anyway, I was just going to say Blake Mitchell.
God, that's a good one.
That's who I think of when I think of 12.
Probably several random quarterbacks you could pick at number 12.
I was also going to say Blake Mitchell.
Really?
Yeah.
LaGrange, Georgia.
That's right. Also, was the 07 game here or there?
07 was Georgia. At Georgia.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like that's a game that South Carolina stole.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It was 14-12.
Very low scoring.
Which that was a mark of those two teams playing each other for about 10 years.
Georgia stole.
Yeah, there's a
Georgia stole one in 05.
Yeah.
06. What was the 14-7 game in Columbia? 08.
Maybe 08.
What happened in 06?
They're all kind of running together.
Yeah, they're all running together.
Because they were all like
is
that.
The Joe Cox game or the Matt Stafford game? I just can't
Well, because they were all, for some reason, just those low-scoring,
crazy.
grinded out, somebody kicked 4 field goal type of games for whatever reason from 05 to about 2011.
05 was the DJ. Is it DJ Shockley?
Shockley.
DJ Shockley game.
Mm-hmm.
Which that was one of those. That was Spurrier's first year. You had no idea what to expect whatsoever. Carolina went to Athens, had a pretty close football game. I think had a chance to drive down and maybe win it and couldn't.
Okay, is that the one where a big play got called back? We were talking about that this morning. I was talking to the Garnet Trust guys, and there was a play where Dacus Turman was in motion. You remember this, Wes?
Mm-mm.
Golly, somebody got to help me out. Somebody save me. Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100. Do you remember that? It happened in one of those games in Athens. They had a big play called back. Anyway.
So 07 was 16-12. 08 was 14-7. 09 was 41-37. And then back to the norm, 17-16, 2010.
What was 06?
06 was 18-0 Georgia.
Oh, okay. I remember that game. Carolina, that game was closer than 18-0. And I think it was one of those games where they just said, we don't need field goals. And
right.
I think ended up not converting fourth downs or having turnovers in the red zone, I think. That was an ugly game.
Yeah, these two teams won't see each other until at the earliest 2026 because of the new SEC schedule. And that's a team that
I don't like it.
That's a team that Carolina typically saw in September these past couple of years that, was a reason why Carolina's gotten off to some slow starts at the beginning of the season because you have had to play that team. Now you shift that to Kentucky and LSU, obviously two teams that you feel like you got a pretty fair shake against Kentucky. We'll see what LSU is going to be at that point in time, but there's no denying how important, and Beamer's talked about this offseason as well, getting off to a better start in September and August, technically, for the first game than you have in years past, because we know what's waiting for you in October. And tough teams like Missouri, A&M, and Clemson at the end of the year, you have to get started off on the right foot, or this season could quickly go in the toilet.
Well, I think, guys, at this point, there has kind of been developing a little MO or a trend, and that is, on the positive side, these teams, despite facing adversity, have not quit on Beamer and staff. Like, even last year, they didn't kind of pull themselves completely out of the hole, but they're sitting there 2-6. Fans are ready to just burn the whole thing down, it felt like, for a second. And, they get themselves back in a position to try, you're one win away from going bowling. And, you remember the first 2 years, they kind of dug a hole those years as well and were able to get some big, just late season wins. I mean, our guy, Will Helms, was saying that, like, statistically, Beamer as a home underdog actually, I think percentage-wise, has one of the better records of anybody out there. And you go back and look at it, I mean, it makes sense. They beat Auburn in Florida, kind of surprise wins that first year. Then you beat, of course, Tennessee, huge surprise win, and then you go on the road and beat Clemson. So they're able to pull themselves out. But that also, if you're going to sort of say, well, hey, credit where it's due for digging yourself out of that hole, you also have to acknowledge, and Beamer has, that, hey, they have dug some holes early on in some seasons. And some of it is, opponents, some of it is based on your schedule, but other times it's just you maybe have not hit the ground running the way you want. And so I think for Carolina this year, we've talked about the lead up, how you start with Old Dominion, which is like a solid team program, but not a world beater by any means. It's a team you expect to win and win the game fairly handily. So then you kind of take that next step up to a Kentucky on the road. So there's a little bit of a lead up, but you still better be ready. You better hit the ground running this year if you're South Carolina. If you're going to have, I look at the schedule, guys. I don't know that this is a schedule that you can get what you want out of it with a slow start. Like, if you're going to get the wins you want out of this schedule, he's absolutely right. You have to be able to start pretty fast this year. And obviously they've made little tweaks and changes to try and make that happen.
Well, and you look at the schedule the past few years, to your point, the reason that there's been so much, college football is a week-to-week thing anyway, everywhere, not just here. But when you dig yourself that hole early and then you look at 2022, not that was the same as last season. Last season went worse than that. But 2022, you're sitting there, you lose, 30-6 at Florida, look terrible. And then you're going, okay, not only was that awful, but then you start looking at the rest of the schedule and you're going, Tennessee comes to town next week. We couldn't stop Florida defensively. How are you going to stop Tennessee? Mm-hmm. Oh, you got to go to Clemson. And so you not only do you, are you commiserating a loss in situations like that, but then you start looking at the path and you go, well, how's this going to happen? Now, like you said, Wes, Beamer has been able to rally his teams. You look at his first season in 2021. There was a lot of ups and downs. They would have a game where it didn't go like you wanted, but then the next week they would rebound. Florida and Auburn, those two wins, if I'm remembering correctly, were sandwiched in between losses that were pretty tough. But to their credit, they were able to rebound. They rebounded last year. They came up short in terms of bowl eligibility because of the hole that they dug. But they did rebound to where they became more competitive, and they grabbed a couple wins in the month of November. So to have the type of season, the point is this, to have the type of season that you want, can you become more consistent? Can you be more competitive in some of those games where you haven't been as competitive in the past? And can you get some wins on the portion of the schedule to where you're not having to rely on springing a bunch of those upsets later in the year, because those are tough to do. You want them. You want the wins that you should be able to get. You want to win some toss-up games, and then you want to go spring an upset. That is ultimately what gets you where you want to be.
To the end of the day, it all starts with what happens in fall camp, particularly these scrimmages. And again, scrimmage 2 was on Saturday. I heard for a little bit from Beamer afterwards, and we'll get into some of those cuts here in just a minute. But the overall consensus, as expected, is that the defense still ahead of the offense, though the offense seems to be coming along a little bit as we're still, again, kind of nailing down who's going to be where. I believe we should get the depth chart right around this time next week as we lead up into the start of the season against Old Dominion. But again, seems like everything was pretty similar to what we saw in scrimmage number 1 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, you have a little different approach this week, and a lot of the week before was sort of install leading up to the scrimmage. This week, a good bit more situational football, which is something we talked about in the lead-in to the scrimmage itself, and much more heavily pass game focused on Saturday. So this was more about, hey, let's drop back. Let's get a bunch of wide receivers in there. Let's let them go play. Let's see what we have. Let's go. Like this is not an offense that we believe is going to drop back and throw the football 70, 75, 80% at the time. But by all indications on Saturday, that's what this was. And so I think that's valuable to go out there and say, hey, go make some plays, go make some mistakes, just go play. And then, as we've talked about several times, you're going to sort of start to dial this thing down soon and really start to focus in on a package of specific plays that you like as your sort of go-to plays, your staple plays, and also some of your stuff you're going to put in for one specific game plan because of the opponent. And so this weekend, again, very pass game focused. From what I've gathered, I do feel like the offense punched back a little bit. Like there's a little bit more explosiveness from the offense. There were some big plays. Now there was much more on both sides of the ball, much more kind of starters playing against starters. And a big part of that is you just want to come out of the thing healthy, which it sounds like they did. So that's huge news, especially when you're talking about good on good, which is ones versus ones. And so I think they really will start to have an idea. I imagine a big part of the meetings yesterday, today with the staff are really about what direction that mythical depth chart is actually headed. And I think there's still some positions to be settled, but for the most part, I think they have a pretty good feel for those things coming out of this scrimmage. And, hey, maybe we get a quarterback announcement here pretty soon as well.
Beamer's words, and now he was repeating part of the question, but he said, I need a couple days, because he's exactly what we kind of predicted. He would say, hey, I need to go watch the tape. I mean, literally had just kind of gotten off the field. Speaking of starts or quicker starts, I have a couple of stats related to the run game that I would like to give on the other side.
We can do that. Hit that coming up. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday here on the game.
For anyone that is getting hungry like I am sitting here in the studio, check out our friends over at Firehouse Subs. 14 different convenient locations all around the Midlands, so no matter where you're at, there's a Firehouse Subs closest to you. You can find out exactly where that Firehouse Subs is a couple different ways. You can go to firehousesubs.com, put in your zip code, your location. It'll tell you exactly where the closest one to you is. Or, my favorite method, download the Firehouse Subs app. You can do the same thing. Search for the closest one next to you. A couple other cool things about using the Firehouse Subs app. Number one, you can register for a free account. That means when you purchase Firehouse Subs, super easy to use. You can use Apple Pay. You can pay with a credit card. You will earn yourself some rewards toward future purchases for free Firehouse Subs, which is awesome. You can also use the Rapid Rescue to go. Avoid the wait. Order online when you go into the store after you order on the app or online at firehousesubs.com. It'll be ready for you. Firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app.
you and sorry, Jordan, and John, just the running back improvement as well. Obviously bringing back Juju, but now you're talking about Oscar, you're talking about Rocket, you're talking about Jawarn, you're talking about DJ Braswell returning, Bradley Dunn returns, Matthew Fuller really had some nice runs today. I'm excited about his future as well. So more depth at running back. I mean, you guys remember we went into the Kentucky game last year. I think we had 2 scholarship running backs in that game. So hopefully we don't end up in that situation this year, but we have more depth at the running back position also.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Metro, Chris Clark, along with you on your Monday. That was Coach Beamer on Saturday, talking about the depth they have in the running back room, and Beamer doing his favorite theme of listing every single person within that room when asked about a certain spot or who's standing out or anything like that. But when it comes to running back, we kind of know what we have, particularly with Rocket Sanders. If he's 100% healthy, can hopefully return to the form that he had in the SEC a couple seasons ago. It's more about the guys behind him and how you're going to divvy up those snaps and how they're going to factor in to this offense as well. But overall, like he just mentioned there, it's a night and day difference from where this room was a year ago going into the season.
Well, I'm just ready to hear what stats Chris has for us over here.
I have 2 different sets of stats.
Okay.
I actually threw out a question on Twitter and on the Insiders Forum that I want to dive into more this week because it actually got a good many reactions. The question was, by the way, what are your 2 predictions? Just 2 for this season.
Can be anything?
It can be anything. It
doesn't have to be bold?
I would prefer it to be bold.
Okay.
And so I'll give that one shortly, maybe even later as a tease. But for now, we were talking about the faster start, and I really feel like, guys, a big measure of that, among other things, is going to be, can this team come out and run the football on Old Dominion? Like if they think about that, if you get into the third quarter and you look up and you go, South Carolina has 31 rushing yards. That's not going to be what people want to see.
Sure.
By any means. And so let's take out the Eastern Illinois game in 2021 because that was a pretty good rushing performance against a very, very bad football team. It has been a theme that South Carolina on offense has not been able to consistently run the ball. Really the past, 3 years. But if you think about last year, what was the stat, Tyler? They were under 90 yards a game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were last in the SEC. I think only 4 or 5 teams nationally were worse in terms of yards per game. So y'all got any guesses in the past 2 season openers? Georgia State, 2022, 2023 North Carolina game. Any guesses about rushing yards produced by running backs in those games?
Last year, North Carolina game,
Yeah.
it was bad. I'm going to say like 19 yards.
Tyler?
I'll go 25.
Y'all were both right. Like the median is the correct answer. It's 22. DeCarrion Joyner had 12 rushes for 23 yards. Juju McDowell had 5 rushes for -1 yards. Xavier Leggett had a carry, I think, I can't remember, maybe a sweep. And then Rattler, of course, ended up having 13 carries. 9 of those, I guess, were sacks. So, 22 yards by the backs. Georgia State, any thoughts? Running backs.
That would have been...
Don't count Hunter Rogers' 5-yard scamper.
Is that the longest run of the day?
That was it was not.
No, not against Georgia State.
It was not.
Would that have been... Was that Marshawn? And... Who else?
Marshawn and Jaheim Bell.
Jaheim.
And Juju McDowell also saw carries in that game.
I'm going to say Marshawn rushed for 50 yards.
No. Jaheim Bell had 39. Marshawn had 30. The backs generated 91 yards. So here's the point. I mean, you want to come out and be able to run the ball a lot more effectively like that in game one. And I think that's going to be a huge point of emphasis with Lenore Sellers, with Rocket Sanders, with the other backs, some, that Beamer named right there. I mean, you got to be better than what you were against North Carolina. You got to be better, I think, than 91 yards. Right. I mean, that's
For sure.
That's a must this year.
Well, I feel like it's been one of the entire focuses of the offseason has been, I mean, we talked about it all offseason. They've changed like everything that it has to do with the running game. And anytime you just completely start over, at a not position even, but just at a concept, at a focus that almost tells you all you need to know about that. Like they completely restarted. You know, if they go out there, I think it's one of those things where if they have some success running the football against ODU, that doesn't necessarily tell us a ton. But if they don't have success running the football against ODU, that might tell us a lot.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. You're not going to say let's say Rocket Sanders has like $120, and as a team they have like 200 rushing yards. Good start. But that doesn't mean, man, we're going to pound Kentucky or anybody else.
Yeah. Now, I think if it was a pretty big number, you'd at least be like, all right, we'll put a
little stock.
We'll say noted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like if it's like if Rocket rushes for 100 yards, but he has like a 75-yard, breakaway in there, and it's like a solid day, but it's not.
Yeah.
Well, that's what skewed some of Mario Anderson's stats last year. It felt like he had a couple long touchdown runs that, at the end of the day, made the game look better overall than the other 8 runs where he never got more than 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. It felt like. But
the thing with Mario is he was at least getting those.
Yeah.
Whereas they weren't really getting those otherwise. I do think, though, you'd like to see a little more just consistency from the running game. Like, not just all. Now, to an extent, it's always going to be a little hit or miss. Like, you're going to have a 1-yard run here, a 15-yard chunk here. That's just how the game of football works. But you would hope you can see a little bit more of, hey, 5 here, 6 here, 7 there. Now, I'm here to tell you, Rocket, for a big dude, go back and watch his film. Rocket does not run the ball like Marcus Lattimore. For a big dude, Rocket is actually making a lot of plays on the outside. Mm-hmm. The key to getting the most out of Rocket Sanders is blocking well enough up front that you can get him to that next level of the defense. And ideally, even onto that next level. Now, where he feasts is if you can get him out to where you have corners and safeties coming up and trying to tackle him. And that's when it's just night-night. Because this is a guy, I saw somebody posted a clip from his Arkansas days yesterday or the day before. Even some of the stuff he was doing in the passing game where they split him out wide and he's making plays out there. Like, there's a lot of things you can do with Rocket Sanders, but just saying, hey, man, run the ball straight up the middle, 3 yards in a cloud of dust is actually not really his style at all.
Yeah, you can go back and look at, you think about some of the plays he made against South Carolina. A lot of them were out on the edge in that 2022 game. It's a good point. And a key, I think, measure this year, and you'll be able to see, it'll be a combo of eye test, plus we'll go back and talk to Clark Brooks at SEC StatCat, and he'll have 3,000 stats down to the decimal point. But yards before contact, that's been a big problem for them. I think that was another metric where they were last. How many times last season did you see, here's a run play and there's just not much of a chance for the back? Now, really, really good backs like Rocket can get you a little bit more even if they're hit early, but it's that consistency that you're talking about, Wes, of can you give him a little bit of space to operate in? A guy like Rocket can turn I'm hitting the backfield into a couple yards or more. But can you give him, hey, here's a couple yards for starters. Now go out and see what you can do. And that'll include out on the perimeter as well, where he really excels.
Yeah, I've got a couple more thoughts on this, but I know we got to hit a break. So let's continue this on the other side.
We'll continue on recapping scrimmage, talking running backs on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday here on the game.
Do want to get ready for the college football season, whether it's week 0 or whether it's week 1, whenever it may be. You want to get ready at your home, whether it's that man cave, your living room, your kitchen, bathroom, outdoor patio, wherever you want to watch college football. Make sure that you have an outstanding setup, and our friends over at Integrated Media can help you out with that. 803-948-8327 or integratedmediainc.com. Now, you can check out some examples of the past work that they've done at homes and businesses. They can make sure your internet signal is outstanding throughout your home or business. They can help you get new equipment like the best new television, Sonos wireless speakers, soundbars, whatever you may need, so that you have a setup that makes your neighbors envious of you. Integrated Media Columbia on Facebook or Instagram is where you can go to find some examples and some inspiration photos. Give Michael and Nathan a call. Integrated Media, 803-948-8327.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyrod, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you. Reminder, this Friday, it's our annual Summer Golf Classic. Going to be at Trotwood Golf Club in West Columbia. Going to be crowning our ultimate Gamecock season ticket winner. later on that day. If you want to sign up, still got some room for some foursomes. Give Charlotte a call, 83755-2000 to register. Continuing on with our conversations about the running backs coming away from Saturday. Let's hear Coach Beamer, cut number 2 here, Ed, talking about Rocket coming away from scrimmage number 2.
Great. We like I said last week, we held him, and again going into last Saturday, he had practiced and had been fine. And in the preseason game last week, we did some 7-on-7 before the scrimmage started, and he participated in that. We just didn't put him in the actual play-in part of it. Today we did. We wanted him to get tackled. That happened some in practice this week where we tackled in practice, and he got tackled a couple times. And then it happened today. I thought he looked great. He's a pro. Ran the ball hard. People don't talk enough about him in pass protection. He's really good in pass protection, and that's so critical, obviously, at the running back position. He runs good routes in the passing game. He can catch. He's just a really good overall running back. We got him some carries in there today, and I thought he showed that he's Rocket Sanders.
And again, for Rocket Sanders, doesn't have to prove anything. We know how good he is when he is at full health. It's just making sure he maintains that health. But at the same time, getting him used to getting tackled again and taking on contact is very important to making sure that he's ready to go when the season gets started.
Yeah, it seems like the buildup is there. I'm sure you're holding your breath just a little bit during the buildup, but it's a necessary component of getting him ready. And I think it's a kind of intriguing question. What are your expectations for Rocket Sanders? And, I think from a statistics standpoint, like y'all ever go into a season and just, even if you don't do it publicly, like, oh, let me try to predict how many yards this guy will have, how many touchdowns, how many passing yards. It is, even if you have a good feel for what like the depth chart is going to be, it's borderline impossible to predict that stuff because there's so many factors. Does a guy miss 4 or 5 games? Does a guy, or do you get in some games where you're just having to throw the ball because you're behind? Does it skew the other way because you have some big leads, or do you have some big leads so a guy's not even on the field? Stats don't tell us everything. I, however, I'm very curious to see just how they choose to use Rocket Sanders. And because I think, and we alluded to it last segment, he really is a guy you want to get, not necessarily, I'm not necessarily talking about you have to run him like sideways, east and west. But you do kind of want to almost hit that edge with him. Like, he's not a guy you want to just pound into the A gap every single time. And, I'm also curious to see how much are they willing to have designed calls that could get Lenore Sellers hit. Because I think when you look at how Arkansas used Rocket, when you look at the potential to use him in certain ways, a lot, like we think of the zone read as being like the default sort of QB run or a run that could result in a QB run. But I think a lot of what Arkansas did, and I think something that fits him better, is like you go back to what Auburn did with Cam Newton, which a lot of people would call like the inverted veer. And essentially, it's really hard to talk about on the radio, but essentially that results, so zone read, if you hand off, default zone read, if you hand it off, it's like a run pretty much up the middle, or the quarterback is hitting that little spot outside of the offensive tackle. The inverted veer results in your quarterback, if he keeps it, he's running straight up the middle, which results in him getting hit more. But that handoff is at an angle to the outside, which I think probably fits Rocket's skill set even better. But again, it all is dependent on, are you willing to let your quarterback get hit?
Yeah, and when you have a guy, it's first of all, it's a decent problem to have when you've got a guy that has the skill set of Lenore Sellers. But it also, you do have to do that exercise, Wes. Like, well, we could run this guy a lot. When you run a guy that much, there's a chance he gets hurt, and it's not like a running back where your sole job is to pass protect, run the football, catch football out of the backfield. When you're a quarterback, you get the ball every single play. You got a lot that you're tasked with doing out there, including throwing it downfield. Hard to do that when you're banged up. So it will be very interesting. And that, I mean, I think that goes back to the question we're all answering is what exactly does this thing look like? We're going to have a better idea after the Old Dominion game while we're watching it. We're not going to have a complete picture. I think we're going to see some things week 2 against Kentucky that we didn't see in week 1, and probably a lot more.
As we should.
I did go back and look to your question, and I don't have the detailed of was that an inside zone, outside zone, but in 2022, Rocket's biggest year, PFF numbers on his types of runs, 184 zone running plays to 35 gap scheme running plays. Gap scheme being power, counter, a lot of the stuff that South Carolina was running, say 2020 Kevin Harris, a lot of that kind of stuff. So a lot of those were zone plays, and they were those outside zone or stretch plays that you're talking about, Wes, and that's really, where he excelled.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as we talked about, for Old Dominion, that's a game that you may look at maybe keeping him on pitch count, get him a few carries, maybe 8 to 10, something like that, just kind of get his feet wet back in the rhythm of playing in. But it's really that week number 2 game against Kentucky, week 3 against LSU, that's where you need him at his 100% health, at his best, and whatever wrinkles you have on offense that you didn't have to show in week number 1, you put those on display there where hopefully that sets the tone for what can be a very successful season for him as well as everybody else in the running back room. And again, Beamer ran through the list of the guys there, and Jordan Howell, Oscar Attaway, obviously Juju McDowell back for another year, Matthew Fuller, DJ Braswell. You got a lot of competent guys that can go out there and make an impact. To what degree do they do that, and how they do that in line behind Rocket Sanders is what we're going to have to wait and see.
I have a question for Wes. Wes, are you going to make a prediction publicly or even in your head about Rockets rushing total this year?
Maybe
to both.
Yeah. I've been toying with doing. I've done it a couple years. I don't know if I did one last year. It's just it's a good way to make yourself look bad because a lot of times it's just wrong, even if you know things. But I've been toying with doing I can't remember what I've called it before, almost like a preview Bible or something, basically here's everything I think of the season in one big article.
I think you should do it.
But this thing, I may do no other articles for the next week. It's just going to be
I don't like it anymore.
It's going to be just one big
so,
here's everything.
Everybody else got to pick up the slack while he works on that.
Odds that Rocket can go for 1,000. What's your Vegas odds?
That's a big number, dude.
It's a big old number. Hasn't happened a lot around here.
Kevin Harris was the last.
Did it, and I think Mike Davis was before him.
I don't know.
I have another question off that.
I was going to say, do you want to think about that during the break?
No.
I have another question.
I hate stats.
Okay.
So somebody brought this up off of my. Wes I hate stats, and that's all.
Stats
I've done
don't tell us.
That's all I've done the whole show. Well, here's the thing, though. If you have, that's a good point. You have 1,000-yard rusher, you can have a bad season, Kevin Harris season.
Yeah. What is it? Right off the bat, ODU, you really hope that you're beating them well enough that Rocket gets about 12 to 14 carries, Oscar gets about 10 to 12 carries, Juwan Howell gets about, you know what I'm saying? That you're just kind of, if it's tight, you're probably saying, no, let's get the ball to 5. You have to win this game.
Sure.
If you're controlling the game and you're in a great position in the game, then I think you get hopefully you get Matt Fuller in there. I'm about to start that train up. By the way, Chris, are you ready to change your answer on some of these red shirt decisions?
Yeah, you're talking about looking bad earlier.
I think I got you on a couple of them, dude. I think I got you on.
That guy's going to red shirt. And then
on at least one of them.
Immediately, it's that guy looked great during the scrimmage. Whoops.
That's why you go out there and do it?
I'm trying to lay this up for leading into the next.
Okay. We'll come back and wrap up.
Tyler's not picking up what I'm putting down.
Tyler missed the lob.
Sorry.
I threw it right down the middle.
We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, guys. I'll tell you who else who will hit a fastball right down the middle. It's our friends at Classic Roofing. And classicroofingsc.com is the website. And Where's my phone number? 803-590-7870. Call them today, really involving anything with your roof. If you own a home, you got to make sure that roof is taken care of. Probably the most important part of your entire home. And they're going to do just that for you, just like they did for me and my wife. Let them come out and give you a free estimate, because that free estimate is going to give you peace of mind. How much time do I have left on this roof? Are there some fixes that need to be done right now? Are there some potential areas that could result in a leak or other issues? You want to know today, then you can plan moving forward, moving ahead. Our friends at Classic Roofing, they're going to handle all that for you. Call them today, 803-590-7870 or classicroofingsc.com.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Westminster, Chris Clark along with you. A couple more minutes here on today's show. And as we got to at the end of that conversation there with what we've learned coming away from scrimmage number 2, perhaps the thoughts of who's going to redshirt and who's not maybe changing a little bit from last week. Which way are we swaying on some different guys now?
Which way are you swaying, Chris?
Well, all right, let's recap. Let's go back. Are the guys that were kind of in question were, as I recall, Matthew Fuller, freshman running back, 4-star, 2,000-plus yards the past 2 seasons in high school, by the way, and has really looked the part. David Busey at safety, and Kelvin Hunter at nickel safety, freshman. Were those the only 3?
Well, I think toss-up wise, we had Wendell Gregory as well, but I think we both said
we agreed on that.
We both said redshirt, although I was kind of
right.
not sure.
Didn't we say Busey had the opportunity to mainly be a special teams guy that would have maybe prevented him from being a redshirt?
That was my thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we also said Mason Love, toss-up.
Yeah, Mason Love toss-up, but I think we agreed on that one. So the 3 that we kind of – so basically I said Fuller, Busey, Kelvin Hunter, redshirt. And you said play for all of them, right?
Well, and basically what it comes down to is if it was a toss-up, Chris went red shirt and I went play, basically.
Play meaning, again, remember,
more than 4 games.
You got to play 5 games.
Yeah. So if they just play in 3 but red shirt, that doesn't count as plays.
Look, and that was the thing coming out of the weekend.
It sounds like Busey is a dude.
He had a day. He apparently had a day. I don't have the full context.
But I here's the thing about it. Chris heard he had a day.
Yep.
And I heard he had a day.
Mm-hmm.
Completely separate from each other. So, and who? I mean, we know Nikki and DQ are starting. We know Gerald Kilgore is in the top 4, like in the rotation. Could Busey sneak into that 4-man rotation? I think we sort of, in our headcanon, have Peyton Williams. I've had him as like the 4th, right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
could he sneak into that mix?
Or even I like the comparison you made the other day of can Busey be this year's, Maurice Brown?
Yeah.
He plays special teams well and plays on several of them and plays in a whole bunch of games. That could be it.
Yeah, because I don't think they're going to be if they're like, hey, this guy can help on special teams, they will treat that, this staff will treat that just as if you said they can help on offense or defense.
He's getting some backup snaps, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Every coach says, oh, we treat special teams the same. That's complete, you know what. Like, that's not how they actually treat it. But this staff does. I mean, this is a staff that gave a snapper in high school, a long snapper, a scholarship because they put that much of a priority on special teams. So I think if this dude is a headhunter and can help you on special teams, can maybe, if he's just as good on special teams as somebody else who is one of your starters, that's where I think he becomes very valuable to your team because that's a rep that starter does not have to take. That's an opportunity to get hit or hurt that starter does not. That's an opportunity to take a breather.
Right.
For that starter. So I think generally this staff, they will play starters on special teams. But if you have somebody who can sort of equally do the same thing or even better, then go with the guy who's not in your main rotation. So we'll see. I think that's a good sign for a young guy who was like not highly recruited at all. That like I don't think, if we're being honest, I don't know if he has like the upside. Let's say like, to be an extreme example, like Nick Eamon-Worry. Everybody's like, this upside is through the ceiling. But are you sort of seeing that Busey's floor is that he's going to help this football team? He's going to contribute. He's going to do something to help you. I think that's a good sign of that being the case.
Yeah, even though we heard really good things about Matt Fuller again, it still didn't change my thought.
It's still a numbers game.
It's a numbers game because you've got, you're still going to have probably 3 running backs ahead of you. And you're not getting 4 running backs, enough carries throughout the course of a year in games. Now, if he ends up being better than a couple other guys, maybe.
Plenty more to talk about as the week rolls along, recapping the scrimmage and getting closer to the start of the season, just 12 days away. It's been the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with myself, Terry Ford, coming up next on your Monday on the Game.